I'm finally happy to have you on because obviously election season, we've had a lot of candidates that are on. There's been some facts that have been kind of put out there, and then a lot of opinions that have been put out there. And so I kind of hope that this interview is going to kind of bring some stuff to kind of rest on like facts from fiction. I read your resume and I would butcher it if I tried to even go through it, and I would rather you do it. So give me a little bit about the background of you before you had taken over the role of our city manager in Panama City, and kind of like what has led you to be where you are at today.
Yeah, Ron, thank you so much. Thank you for the kind words and for the invitation. And, I'm going to be very careful. My commitment to you, I'm not really here to share opinions. I'm here to answer questions and share facts. So my family has been around Panama City and Bay County for 100 years this year. My great-grandfather actually moved down here in 1925. So a lot of history. And I graduated here in Panama City in 95. And, for a season, worked for corporate America, McDonald's, Delta Airlines, KPMG, Media General at the local TV station here, Channel 13. But during all that time, I kind of really generated an interest in politics and government and public service. And so in 2010, I had the opportunity to manage former Congressman Steve Sutherland's campaign. And so I accepted that responsibility and that role, and we won. And I went on to eventually become his chief of staff. And then when he left office, I then had the opportunity to serve chief of staff to another member of Congress from out west. And then he left after a few years, having served almost 20 years in Congress. And then I had the opportunity in the summer of 2018 to join the first Trump administration as a presidential appointee, working at HHS. And when he left office in January of 21, shortly after, I received a phone call from the former city manager encouraging me to consider coming and working for the city, my home, where my family's been now for 100 years. And so initially came down and ran a couple of the different departments, the logistics department and then public works. And then again, just over a year ago, in January of 24, had the extreme privilege to become the city manager of Panama City. So that's kind of my progression from corporate America over to the public sector, to just serve a community that I call home.
Yeah. So very, very intelligent. You've held a lot of roles. So I know that I don't have you for a lot of time, so I'm going to try to condense this as best as I can. So I'm going to
fire away.
I'm going to start off with Josh Street's ward, the main controversial subject that just seems to be just blowing up. And it seems like, and I know you can't say much about this, but from the outside looking in, and I was told this when I was running for office, you choose 3 points that you want to run on. Right. And so it seems like the mayor and, of course, the other 2 that are running for these wards have kind of picked their 3 talking points, which is like the Marina, Chestnut Avenue, and Beach Drive. That seems like kind of like the one that we're like hitting the most on. So yeah. I'm gonna start off, like I said, in Josh Street's ward with the Chestnut Avenue, that purchase, and of course, like how all that has come to be. I kind of want to put this to rest and put it to bed. What are the ins and outs of this deal? Why did you bring it to the commission as many times as you did after? Because and I was kind of corrected on this yesterday, and I don't know if it's true, but this was already decided on by the previous commission, correct?
No, I believe it was after 2023, because it really came to be during my time as city manager. And so that would have been, or maybe at the end of my time as public works director. So that would have been after the last commission was elected in 2023. So this current commission is the one that ultimately moved it forward. So I will state before we get into that particular piece of property, you did highlight, Ward 4, and that is one of the wards that's up for election this spring. Commissioner Street is seeking another term from the men and women of Ward 4. And then in Ward 1, also up. Those are the wards that are up together, 1 and 4. And then in 2 years, it'll be wards 2 and 3. Commissioner Halligus has indicated that she's not going to seek another term, so that's an open seat. And I've said this all along, and I think I said it to you maybe a year ago when we first met. First off, I have the utmost respect for anyone that has the courage to put their name out there and run for office. You've done that. It's not an easy thing to do. And so I don't care, male, female, Republican, Democrat, old, young, it takes a lot of courage. And when you finally are successful, if you are, that's when the real work begins. And so I just want to kind of state that. And I've said this to everybody. I mean, the seat, Ward 4, and I know that Commissioner Street would even agree with this, and I hope that all elected officials would, that seat, that belongs to the men and women of Ward 4. And you have to ask to be elected to it and then to be reelected to it. And so, I think election season is exciting in some ways when you're kind of in the business of running. But I understand it's also tough because a lot of times people who are kind of on the outside and not necessarily having all the inside baseball, and be like, man, sometimes it's really hard to know what the facts are and what's really going on. So that's a segue into answering the question that you had. So 1128 Chestnut is a piece of property in St. Andrews, downtown St. Andrews. And I would say it was probably shortly after I took the appointed position of city manager, and something that I had known for years, honestly, but certainly since I moved back to Panama City, in the summer of 21, that we had serious parking challenges in downtown St. Andrews. And as I took the role of city manager, and let me add, that wasn't just coming from Commissioner Street. I mean, that was coming from other commissioners as well that had experienced that. And so I kind of looked at all of the inventory for downtown St. Andrews, all of the land that we own, the land that is owned by businesses, and what might be for sale, and I try to, including Truesdale Park, I might add, a city park, and I kind of came up with a kind of a long-term strategic plan. Happy to share that memo with you. I don't know if anybody's given it to you, but it kind of outlines my strategy for kind of increasing parking and maximizing our resources in St. Andrews. And a couple of key things was, number one, I felt that being kind of south of 12th Street was the area we really wanted to focus on, kind of south of 12th and then from Chestnut to the west. That was that key area down there for the walkability and everything. And so we owned a couple of parcels a little bit further north at 13th and Beck, and they're right on Beck Avenue. And part of my understanding and belief, and this was talking with other staff as well, is I don't know that a parking lot right up against Beck Avenue is the highest and best use for that piece of property. So, and one thing that I've also said, not just in St. Andrews, but really around the whole city, and I believe that our elected officials, really all 5 of the commissioners and the mayor right now would all agree that the city really owns way too much land, whether it be parks, whether it be just random parcels in neighborhoods around the city. So I don't know that we really need to be in the business of storing up land. So I really want to look to kind of move beyond having a ton of parcels that could really be better used by the private sector. So as we started looking at where we can focus on increasing the parking where we needed it, we owned 3 lots. And when I was public works director, we worked on getting those paved and putting in appropriate stormwater. That was the one at 11th Court in Bayview, right by the boat ramp. The one there behind Alice's on Bayview, kind of right across from Amavita on 10th Street. And then, of course, the one at Oaks by the Bay. But that was kind of our first step in like really coming in there and putting in a stormwater management system, paving that parking lot, and then clearly striping it to delineate the parking. When you do that, you really increase parking. Otherwise, you have what my dad always called random access parking. People just kind of park wherever. And so then we had the opportunity to sell the lease to the cell tower that's over there at 19th and Beck. And so that was going to generate some money. And then also selling these particular parcels at 13th and Beck and 13th and Chestnut. And then also potentially using some grant money to to purchase this parking lot that had been the old diesel property, 1128 Chestnut. And of course, regardless of what was on the property, whenever you're going to buy something, you need to do your due diligence and look at the environmental concerns, your survey, your boundaries, and all of that. And concerns were raised that there might be some contamination there. I mean, after all, it was a diesel property. However, and this is like literally right from the Department of Environmental Protection, and that is that, if there is certain type of contaminants, that encapsulating either with asphalt or concrete is an acceptable method to contain any type of contamination. And so that was our plan, was to make that a parking lot, and eventually down the road, 5, 7, 10 years, that's a really ideal site for a parking garage. Okay. So, but again, some of the initial testing came back. So then from it's what we call the ESA, the Environmental Site Assessment, and there were some contaminants. So we went and we did the ESA Phase 2. And they go in there and they can do 2 ways. And I talked to the environmental expert on this who did this for us. And they can go in there and they can they do temporary well isn't maybe the best term, but it's what they use. They just stick a pipe in the ground, test it on the spot, and then pull the pipe back out. Well, they did that, and it showed some raised levels in one spot of contaminants and maybe not in another. So at that point, again, because our plan is to make it a parking lot and to encapsulate it, we really could have moved forward at that point. But but there were concerns raised. The mayor raised concerns, and so I was like, you know what? Like we don't have to rush things. I'm all about hustling, but I also don't want to rush to failure either. And so out of respect for just some of those questions, we went ahead and did a more full Phase 2, which involved the installation of some permanent wells. Really it's more like a monitoring well where they put it in there and you don't just stick it in and test it on the spot. You stick it in there and you kind of monitor it for a week, and then they come back and pulled it out. Well, they did that Phase 2, the monitoring Phase 2. And really at the end of the day, there was no contaminations that were found that were above any type of concerning levels. And so we were given the clear to move ahead with our plans for the parking. The other side to it that kind of came out was around the appraisals. And look, I admit, a lot of this is subjective in nature when it comes to appraising of property, whether it be a residential home or a commercial piece of property. There were a couple of really, really high appraisals, and there were a couple of lower appraisals. And so, I was given the permission and approval by the commission to negotiate with the seller. And so what we decided to do was say, well, I kind of said, well, I'm not going to pay that much. Your appraisal says this, mine says this. And so we decided to meet in the middle. We took the average. And then there were some concerns and questions raised about that. And so we went out and we did another appraisal, and he did one and I did one, and kind of the same thing. And then, and so then at the end, we ended up doing another one. I was just trying my very best to kind of be above reproach and show that, I want to do things above board.
And transparent.
And be very transparent,
yeah.
Even though I could have moved ahead. So I went out and did 2 more appraisals, and pretty much, guess what? Pretty much right there. So at the end of the day, we ended up paying, $1,011,000 for it, which was pretty much right in the middle.
And then didn't it appraise for 1.13 though?
The last, the last 2 appraisals, I want to say one was around $850, and the one was around like 1.13. Were kind of the last 2 that I had done.
Mm-hmm. So we still purchased it underneath that 1.13.
One of the last appraisals we did. Yeah. But I do want to be honest. There were a couple of appraisals that were under that, and there were some that were above the purchase price. So
I think that it was a good, just based on my own and I told several people that have been on here that have wanted to talk about this that I think that the sell price was proper because the seller had purchased that property for what? Like it was around
$800,000.
Yeah, $800,000. That's what I said.
Yeah.
And so and I said, well, when did they purchase it? So it's like anything that was purchased, because I purchased my home back in 2021, and it's gone up $160,000, right. And that's a residential. You're talking about a commercial property. Yeah. I don't think that there was any foul play on the purchase price at all. I think it's right in line with what the market has done. Just my own personal opinion. The other thing, though, when you were talking about the environmental study, one of the environmental studies came back negative, but wasn't it for, I heard, so don't quote me, but it
Yeah.
was like asbestos for the building or something like that.
There was,
but you're going to tear it down anyway.
yeah, there was some asbestos in the building, and I mean, a lot of these older buildings have that. And the owner, we're now the owner, the prior owner, went in there and did some of that mitigation in advance of that, and so that was addressed. And there's, I've been involved in tearing down a number of buildings, both personally and professionally over the last 5 years. A lot of us have post Hurricane Michael, and there's steps to do with it. I left out one key thing though in the middle of all of that, and just helped kind of shape it. Commissioner Street and I hosted a roundtable at City Hall. I don't know, probably 5 or 6 months ago. We pretty much invited most of the business owners in downtown St. Andrews and said, hey, because we kept hearing that, again, parking is a concern, and I do believe philosophically that parking in downtown areas is a responsibility of the government, of the local government. I think it can be a shared one. I think some businesses may choose to pay for parking, meaning purchase a parking lot and make it only for their customers. And if that's what they want to do, and they can buy a piece of property, on the open market, that's certainly their prerogative.
And let me interject though real quick on that. So the reason why I think that was a good thing, what you're talking about, getting the business owners involved with that, is because, so I was stationed at Fort Campbell for a good while up in Kentucky, and so we used to travel down to Nashville all the time. And there was nothing to go down to a part of Nashville, and we weren't able to find parking, and we would just go to a different part of the city because it's like parking's not available.
Yeah.
That happens all the time. So the fact for the city to come in and help out with business like that, it's actually a pretty decent thing. I just wanted to say that real quick.
You're
it's
absolutely,
a huge thing in bigger cities.
It is a big thing, and folks do it. And there's, and I don't know if the commission will, down the road maybe consider paid parking to help us better manage it in certain areas. Some of the premium spots, we'll see. For right now, that's indefinitely on hold. But at that roundtable with the St. Andrews business owners, I honestly went into that meeting, and I think Commissioner Street probably did too, that some people might not be supportive, but they were almost, unanimous around. Even the one person that had a lot of questions at the beginning ended up at the end of it being like, okay, yeah, I can see this. And it's going to be within walkability of 10th Street, of the Marina, of Bayview. Additionally, one other change that we decided as part of the kind of that long-term strategic parking plan for St. Andrews was to take Truesdale Park and really maximize the parking around Truesdale Park. So in addition to fixing up the building to have some community space, we're also going to maximize parking. And I want to say we're going to get like 65 parking spots at Truesdale. And then at the diesel property, 1128, I'm going to get 115 parking spots, 5 of which will be handicap accessible at diesel property. And then I think 3 or 4 at Truesdale. So again, we want to encourage folks to come down into our downtown areas. And like you said, if you go there and there's not really a place to park, they're going to go somewhere else. So I think it's important, and I think we did the right decision, and ultimately the commission did by purchasing that property. But also, even though we kind of slowed down and did things decently and in order, I think that shows that we operated in good faith. So, and listen, if people disagree with it, so be it. I mean, that's fine, as long as that disagreement is done with facts and with the truth. And if you disagree philosophically, then state that you disagree philosophically.
So the personal side of that topic is, and I know, getting involved with the drama side of it. This was a part where the mayor has accused a sitting commissioner, a former manager, a former mayor. I don't know if you were part of that, but of breaking sunshine law. This has been a huge drama. I think that it's actually disheartening to the community to see something like that take place, where accusations are thrown around. So I'm just gonna ask you point blank. I think a lot of times we try to get around a question. So is there any corruption at all that has to do with this property being sold?
Not that I know of. I mean, I know that was stated at a commission meeting. It was public.
It's embarrassing.
It is. I mean, I can't speak to every single meeting that people have, especially prior to my time at the city or prior to my time becoming city manager. But I mean, the truth is, I've met one of the owners a few times, and then the other owner, I don't even know him. I don't even know if I've even met him. So, this idea that we're helping people out, I mean, and look, I've always consistently said, especially since coming back to Panama City and working for the local government, is that, I'm never going to do something for someone, just because it's who they are. And I want to do the right thing. But likewise, I'm also not going to do something because of who somebody is. Like, and I'll pick someone, the tax collector, Mr. Purdue. Like, I'm not going to not fix a pothole in front of his house or deal with his water meter because someone might say, well, you're just taking care of, some local official. Well, no, I mean, everybody, regardless of your position, regardless of the role, regardless of what neighborhood you're in, you deserve to have your government, serve you. And so I don't see people getting favors, and I would never want to be a part of that. And so again, I looked at that piece of property, and I think the commission did too, and saw the long-term value and the location for that in downtown St. Andrews, and it being again kind of south of that 12th Street corridor, heading down towards Oaks by the Bay Park, Truesdale Park, our beautiful St. Andrews Marina that's in the process of being rebuilt. And it is a great location because we had some engineers look at it too, as far as the exit, off of backside, front side, and so just being able to really maximize parking for the long term. And one of the things I want to do, Ron, is, and I've said this, is I want to try to make decisions today, kind of beginning with the end in mind. And what I mean by that is I really want whoever's sitting in this seat, whether that be in 5 years, 10 years, or 15 years. I don't know what the Lord, has in store for me in the future. But I want them to be able to look back and say, wow, this is not really a problem because of the decisions that were made 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. Because we do have a lot of challenges today because of a lack of investment and maintenance and upkeep of our utilities and our infrastructure and the growth over the last 40 years. Coupled with Hurricane Michael and Hurricane Sally that came in on top of that. Yeah. So that's kind of my driving force and my philosophy in this role.
Yeah, that's always something. Like, as I was growing up, my dad used to say that all the time. Decisions you make today reflect the life that you will lead, and that goes into government. Decisions that are made today are what's going to reflect later on down the road.
Hopefully for my kids and my grandkids. And I have 5 kids, and so.
I saw that. Yeah. I was like, I saw that on there. I was like, I didn't know you had that many kids.
Yes,
good for you,
I do.
Man.
Well,
I'm doing good with 2 kids and 2 dogs right now, and that's enough. Yeah. So let's move east to west.
Yes, sir.
So we're moving from St. Andrews. We'll move to the Beach Drive.
Well, we're moving east though. West to east.
Sorry, my bad. West to east. My geographical map is so messed
up. It's
all
good. I'm just giving you a hard time. Yeah.
Okay. So, going from St. Andrews to Beach Drive. Mm-hmm. First question about Beach Drive. We don't need the road to be able to construct the path. Is this a true statement?
That is a true statement. It obviously does change the process if the road isn't transferred. But, the road transfer is, it in one sense, yes, it is a separate issue because, and really we're going to go back to the west again now because the businesses along Beck Avenue.
Let me interject because I have a question.
Okay.
And I'm sorry. I know I just gave you one. You answered the one that I wanted, but.
It's your show.
Why are people getting it mixed up? Because as of right now, the narrative that is being led by all kinds of pages and shows and all this is basically they're running the two together. They're basically, they can't talk about the road without talking about the path, can't talk about the path without talking about the road. Why is this confusing and I know you can't attest to why.
Yeah.
Is it just the fact of people is there something that was probably said? Is there something that was probably perceived from a meeting to where people are coming? Because I watched the commission meeting from the other night. Mm-hmm. And either it is intentionally being brought as a false narrative, or people just really are not educated enough to be even having the conversation at all.
Yeah. So,
and I know you don't want to say it like that, but I word things.
I always
directly.
want to be very gracious. So, because Lord knows I live by grace alone. So I will say that, I definitely don't want to question motives, but I do think if you oppose something, creating confusion and chaos around it does to some degree help. So I see there probably is some who are intentionally trying to confuse the situation, but I think there's probably some, and I don't know that I would say educate as much as they just need to be informed. And so, when we initially asked to transfer the road, it was, requested that from FDOT. The prior city manager made that request. That was kind of after we had already kind of gotten the funding and we're kind of moving forward with the path. But we realized it would give us a little bit more control long term. And again, not just for Beach Drive from Frankfurt to 6th Street, but even Beck Avenue coming off of 15th Street, because, the folks in St. Andrews, and we've talked about parking and kind of what the long-term vision is for downtown St. Andrews. Well, they look at what we've done in downtown Panama City with the streetscapes and the social district and the increase in pedestrian safety and golf carts and all of that and walking around. Well, it's really difficult to do that, Ron, in St. Andrews, because you've got a U.S. alternate 98 highway coming through in Beck Avenue. And so the folks in St. Andrews have wanted that road to transfer to the city, from my understanding, for decades because of that very reason. And so then you move forward to it. So in regards to the project, I feel like I've stated this dozens of times from the dais, but I'm happy to state it again. So there's two ways the project can move forward. If the FDOT transfers the road to us, which as of now they indicate they don't want to. I don't know that necessarily means forever, but for right now, they've indicated they're not going to transfer it at this time. However, they have asked us to submit some altered plans, which are now posted on our website for the Beach Drive multi-use sidewalk. And so if they don't transfer us the road, obviously I can build what I want along the side of my roads once I get the appropriate environmental permits, depending on if it's in the right of way or not. Because they're not transferring it, we basically have to submit our plans to them, which we do all the time. Companies do it all the time. Folks work alongside roads, whether companies are working alongside our roads, communications companies, people building things. You get a right-of-way permit. People that are working alongside DOT roads, we do it. We get a DOT permit. And so they review the plans and they approve them, and they grant us a right-of-way construction permit. And so those are the two options. Either they transfer the road to us and I proceed without needing FDOT's review and approval of the plans, or they don't transfer us the road, which is the path we're on right now, and they review those plans and they sign off on them and they grant us a right-of-way construction permit. And so, and then we go out and we build it according to those plans.
So you just said something that was kind of like something that I've been hearing, because you said that's kind of like the route that we're on right now, where the FDOT is not going to be handing over that road. But they haven't made a complete and total decision. Right now, it has to do with how wide the road is going to be, correct?
Right.
That's kind of like the argument.
Yeah. Well, there were some concerns raised about narrowing the lanes to 10 foot. We're looking at, maybe the speed limits and all that. And listen, and the last thing we want to do, and I've stated this publicly, we've also stated it in letters to DOT leadership. And listen, we have a great relationship with DOT. That doesn't mean we always agree, but I've been married for 24 years and my wife and I don't always agree. It's okay. It just means we got to work through it. And so we got a great relationship with DOT and definitely appreciate our colleagues there. We have so many things going on with DOT, not just this one particular path. But there were some concerns raised about the narrow the lanes and the impact it could have on some of the trucks. And the last thing that we want to do is hurt commerce in either St. Andrews or downtown Panama City. What we have consistently said to the businesses in downtown Panama City, as well as the DOT, is we are keenly aware that we need to identify and maybe kind of rebuild a truck route into and out of downtown Panama City for safety and for expediency. Because if you look at some of those turns right now, coming down Beck Avenue onto 9th Street, onto Frankfurt and onto Beach Drive, it's a little bit of a challenge.
It's already a challenge. Yeah.
It's all, I mean, the truth is all of those turns really fail right now. So even if we weren't moving forward with this path, even if there was no conversation about road transfer, I still believe that we need to identify a better route. And I've said I would work with DOT, I would work with the county. We also got a great relationship with the county, and work with the businesses in downtown Panama City and downtown St. Andrews to identify a route, modify intersections, modify the turn radiuses, modify the markings on that intersection in order to make it quicker and safer for those trucks to get into and out of downtown Panama City or downtown St. Andrews. And here's the thing, I lived and worked up outside DC for almost a decade, and like this is a situation that all downtowns have to deal with. You've got to kind of have a way for commerce to come into and go out of. And so I think, again, that this is an issue that we're going to have to, I think, address, and we're committed to addressing it more long-term, regardless of Beach Drive and the Beach Drive multi-use sidewalk.
Sounds like you're really, really good at extrapolating your answers. Extrapolating your answers? Is that the right way of
Sounds
putting
good
it?
to me.
Yeah. So I'm going to hit you with just like the questions that I have here.
Sure.
And you can kind of put them all together. So first of all, I'm gonna bring you back into what you were saying about the FDOT. So I had a candidate on, and they talked about how the FDOT did a study, and on average, 11,000 cars utilize Beach Drive every day. He was saying that according to that study, that 11th Street and 15th Street are gonna like see huge, like, I guess, more of an influx of traffic, and it was going to create, this issue. I don't know if that's a first question. Well,
Sure.
I'll hit you with that one first. I'm going to have to do one at a time.
No, that's fine.
Sorry.
That's totally fine, Ron. So yes, I think if we do narrow, even though 11-foot lane, and I mean the biggest trucks that come down there are Chevron, and we have communications from them. And the last thing we want to do is do anything to harm Chevron. They're a vital part of our community. The resources that they bring to the community through fuel is critical. Same thing with the SC Row company. In fact, the design engineer and my public works director have met dozens of times, maybe not dozens, but almost a dozen times with the SC Row fuel company and Chevron, and we made modifications to the driveway. Now, the SC Row company is more on the state side, and the Chevron, believe it or not, the Chevron side is actually split. Half of it is on the state part, and the other half is actually on the city part. But we've worked to kind of modify that. But with 11-foot lanes, like they can still use that, and there's no limitation. But I do think, right now those lanes are 13 foot. I mean that's as wide
Interstate.
That's as wide as I-10.
Yeah.
I mean Highway 231 are 12-foot lanes, and listen. My long-term goal with Beach Drive, and again, this is even separate from the path, and I will continue to follow the will of the commission on that path. I do see the long-term value in it, and I do think that it will make the bay healthier. I do think it will clean up that area. I think it will preserve our natural beauty through there. And what I envision is I would love to, next step, if the path is built, working with FPL to underground all those power lines through there and get all of that gone. And instead of the big, huge wooden telephone poles, put in nice lamp-style posts like we see in downtown St. Andrews and downtown Panama City. And as the oak trees, we're going to plant like 85 new oak trees as part of this project. Have this beautiful canopy waterfront lot.
I literally just had somebody that moved here. One of the people that I work with, they moved here from North Carolina, and they came down. They looked at the area before they moved down here, and he told me, he was like, "Man, dude, I just feel like I went back in the freaking 60s and 70s when I came here, like seeing all these power lines and everything." He's like, because where he's from, it's like, that's a thing of the past.
It is. And we're on a path to hopefully get rid of those, but it's going to take a while to that end. But yeah, so I mean, do I think if we slightly narrow the lanes, I mean, there's still going to be 11 foot. So large trucks, if they choose can use it, can. But I do think, you'll see some traffic move to 11th Street and 15th Street. But those roads are designed for that. I mean, you've got 11th Street's got that nice crown, extra wide shoulders on each side. And so, and that's what some of the intersections we've talked about modifying, like Jinx and 11th, Jinx and 5th Avenue downtown, or 5th Street rather. And so, but yeah, I mean, I don't have any, even if we had moved the lanes down to 10 foot, you're going to see all 11 or 12,000 vehicles, move up to 11th and 15th. I still think you'll see a lot of traffic on Beach Drive because it's a beautiful route, and so I think people love to drive it.
So this is a two-part question, kind of, but we can do it one part at a time. The non-binding referendum that has come out for Beach Drive, this one that's going to be on the ballot. It's the rumor and the peanut gallery right now, on Facebook and all these other different platforms is saying that it was tricky wording. I've brought it up now in front of 3 candidates that have sat here, and I've read it, and I still have not seen any type of tricky wording or anything like that. The question with it is A, do you believe that it is tricky wording? Do you believe that the normal person can actually, and when I say normal, I guess I mean literate, because it seems like it's kind of like a no-brainer how it's worded. And number 2, run me through the process on getting a non-binding referendum added to a ballot and how the wording was decided upon.
Right. So state statute drives a lot of that. And so I reached out to Miss Nina Ward, the supervisor of elections here in Bay County, and said, hey, a couple of my commissioners would like to see this. We kind of talked about it a little bit last summer, and it failed. A couple of votes failed. And then, when we had some recent conversations with FDOT and also with the community, and it just because there's been these kind of 2 competing online polls, which the city wasn't a part of either one of them, 1 for, 1 against, and we acknowledged that they were around 3,000 each. I don't remember the exact numbers, but it seemed to be this big debate on is there really support for this project? And so look, I've been in the political business for almost 20 years. Online polls are really not scientific. I mean, you don't really know who's who. And I heard from people that said, I went on the one petition and typed in Mickey Mouse, and I went on the other one and typed Donald Duck. And so I'm sure some people on both sides were kind of playing with those petitions. And so this was a way to really objectively gauge where the community is and stands in regards to this project. So, I reached out to Ms. Ward. She says, yep, let me send you some information. State statute drives it. Here's requirements for kind of the summary, and then for the wording of the language. And then we, put it on one of the agendas, and it only required a majority vote. So 3 out of the 5 commissioners had to vote yes. And now at the meeting, there was a couple additional words in it, but I know Commissioner Granger kind of pushed that maybe we kind of pull out those 2 more subjective words, such as beautifying, because, beautifying something, that's just the one example I'll use. That's kind of subjective, but, environmental improvements, that's pretty objective. In fact, the opponents of the Beach Drive path actually asked us to do a true kind of environmental opinion and assessment of the project from an FDOT approved environmental engineer. And so we did that. And the lady, I don't know if anybody sent you that memo. It's a public record. I'm happy to send it to you if you haven't gotten it. But it's from a Volkert engineer over in Mobile. So she's not even from here, doesn't really have a dog in the fight. And she really looked at everything that was proposed and said there are a lot of environmental benefits. And so we left that word in there. And then safety, I think if you look at the north side of the sidewalk, anytime you come across roads, and there's, probably 11 or 12 different intersections through there as you kind of go down there, that can kind of reduce safety to some degree. And then stormwater. We're wanting to put these better management. We want to right now everything just washes right into the drainage inlets and right into those outfalls. And I want to make one key point because I think this is important. One of the reasons too we wanted to narrow the lanes and kind of move the path, move that curb north, is that we wanted to stay either inside the FDOT maintenance right of way or the city's platted right of way. This is not about anybody's personal property.
We went over that with Daniel Schultz last night. Went over the history of that ice house, how when the dredging took place, there actually wasn't even a beach there. Like that beach was added after the dredging, right? Back in like 1914, 19.
Well, I know going back to 1914 is there was talk about when it was two separate towns, kind of St. Andrews and Panama City, there was a boardwalk of sorts, and I think there's just a road up against it, and it was just kind of right up against the water. There was no...
It looked like Sarasota.
No real like sandy, if that's what you're saying. Yeah, I understand what you're saying now. Yeah, no real like sandy area.
And that's where that path is going to be. Yeah. So people that sit there and talk about how, as I brought up the tide line, what it used to be versus where it's at today and all of that. And it's like, yeah, man, like nobody's property rights are being
and that's an important point, because like for the folks that want to go down there and walk out onto the bay and walk along the shoreline and get their ankles in the water and all that, like none of that's going to be touched. This is up closer to the road inside the FDOT maintenance right away. And listen, and there's been studies that show, and I know the concerns that that this could bring out crime and trouble. But
they said the same thing about the dang path that they built in Lynnhaven.
I've heard the same thing.
And it's been the greatest thing ever. Yeah. I mean, it just has been.
And I've heard that from people. I've not used it, but I have family and friends that have, and even they admit, like, we were kind of skeptical at first, but it's really great. And multi-use paths actually show that that they do reduce crime. They because criminals and people that don't that have nefarious intentions aren't going to hang around areas where there's a lot of people and a lot of activity. And I read an article a couple of months ago, and it showed that one of the biggest secrets to to living to 90 was like drinking lots of water and walking. I mean, it's literally two very simple things. And so and I think if you look, and we focus so much on Beach Drive, but I want to kind of zoom up again. And we are really trying with all of these projects, the several $100 million in infrastructure projects we have going on around the city, to really add sidewalks in, because this town was not built with sidewalks, and we really want, in all areas, we want to get people off the road and really walking on sidewalks. And when you do that, believe it or not, that actually improves capacity for your traffic. It makes it safer because you don't have pedestrians and vehicles kind of in the same area.
So last two questions. Well, again, I'm going to do them one at a time, but one of the questions that I have about Beach Drive, so I used to live off of 19th Street. I used to run from 19th Street down Balboa to Beach Drive, and then I would run the sidewalk on Beach Drive. I've caught lips on Beach Drive on those sidewalks. It's dangerous. The erosion, the tree roots that have come up and have uprooted some of the sidewalk. I mean, it's dangerous, for runners, especially at nighttime when it's not well lit in some areas. Bringing that around, though, to the question is like that sidewalk has not been maintained for years and years and years. And so what is the long-term maintenance plan for this new path? It's almost kind of like, and I mean, look, I'm going to play devil's advocate a little bit, but it's like the city hasn't been able to maintain the Beach Drive sidewalk for years and years. Because that was a thing before Hurricane Michael. It was a thing before I left to go in the Army and all that. I come back, the sidewalk looks like dog crap. And I was like, well, we're going to add a new sidewalk. And I'm like, dude, you guys couldn't take care of this one, but now we're going to be building this one. Now, I get it. It was a state appropriation. So it's like, well, we have the money. Let's do it. What's the long-term maintenance plan to make sure that what happened there doesn't happen on the south side?
Great question. So, Ron, and I hate this in government when you kind of point, but that's not been a city sidewalk for decades. It's a state road. It's a state road.
Wait a second. So that's FDOT.
That's FDOT's responsibility. And they come in a lot of times and fix it, but you've got some challenges where you've got those beautiful old trees that are kind of lifting up the sidewalk. And so I don't want to hurt those trees. I'd rather them.
So technically, I'm sorry, but making this a city road would help maintain it better.
Well, then I could send in my streets team to fix all those sections along the north side. But right now, that it's a state road. That's their sidewalk. And so, and listen, one of the things we want to do too, as part of the storm drain improvements, like a lot of the residents along Beach Drive have like French drains because a lot of the yards are kind of elevated.
My next question was on the bay savers.
Yeah. So I'd love to see the French drains from their yards kind of go into the drainage system if we can in order to keep the sidewalk on the north. Honestly, if the road had transferred, we were, of course, commission would have had to give final approval, but I was okay suggesting that we remove that sidewalk and kind of let that be like just an extended, kind of yard of those folks and keep the people across Beach Drive and not right up against the property line along the houses. And I feel like that would help maybe preserve better, some of those trees. You got some really beautiful trees on the north side through there. But yeah, you mentioned the bay savers or.
Well, let me hit on that real quick. Yeah, that was This is man, dude, that's crazy. I wish I would have thought about that before you said that, because like I said, I've had a lot of people on the show and I've asked them the same thing and they'll sit there and they'll agree with me. It's like, yeah, the city can't even take care of a sidewalk, but you just, wow, that's crazy. Yeah, it's a state road. That's the reason why those sidewalks have been jacked up.
But I want to be fair though. We have sidewalks that we're
no, I know, but that particular sidewalk I've consistently hit the city on, where I mean, it's a mistake that I've been making where I've been like, man, dude, they don't need to be adding that because they can't even take care of that one. But that changes everything.
We work very hard. I mean, my streets guys work 6 days a week repairing sidewalks, curbs, and gutters. Now that we're past the FEMA, we had FEMA repair something like 150 sections of sidewalk and then around 90 to 100 like curb and gutter sections. We're done with that, and so now we've transitioned, and FEMA paid for that through a public assistance claim. Now that we're done with that, we finished that up maybe 6 months ago or so. Our public works team and the streets division specifically has prioritized, working with the public works director and the city engineer to get out there and start repairing all the sidewalks that are now our responsibility post-storm. And it wasn't really the storm. This is what I don't think people understand. It wasn't really the storm that damaged. It was all the trucks afterwards coming in to haul out 50 years of debris in 18 months. And so, we just put a plan now over in Millville, just to give you a very tangible example, where we realized that we have about almost 4,000 linear feet of sidewalk that needs to be repaired in Millville that was damaged, but for whatever reason it wasn't part of the FEMA claim. Hey, that's fine. We're moving on from that. And so we have a plan between the city street maintenance budget and the CRA budget to repair those, and we're working on that right now. But I think we're going to do maybe 1,200 feet at first, 1,200 linear feet, and it's about $60,000. So we're doing that, and those are two or three very long stretches. We also have little bits and pieces here and there, and we literally have hundreds of orders right now, of work orders to go out there and fix these small sections. And like I said, our guys are working 6 days a week to repair the sidewalk sections and the curbs and the gutters, and we'll continue to do so. And if there's an area where we know is like very, very high traffic, or something happens where like there's a cave-in forms, or we will absolutely prioritize that. So I think that's a good kind of transition into the maintenance along here. We got some good feedback that we weren't maybe doing as good of a job as we could have at Asbell Park, which is right there at Lake Caroline in the middle of Beach Drive. And so our Parks, Culture, and Recreation Department literally 2 or 3 days a week has an employee go through there, sweep for garbage, empty the trash cans, and not only do they do it at Asbell Park, they also do it on the north side there at 10th Street in Lake Caroline, because we have a trash can there and we keep that tidy. And so, if this is something that does come to be, we are absolutely going to have our PCR team stay on top of that, because that would be a beautiful and wonderful investment for our community, and so we definitely want to take care of that.
So last topic, talking about the Beach Drive thing, is going to be those bay savers. So there's supposed to be 17, right, in between?
That I believe, yes, 16 or 17, yes.
Where are we currently using bay savers? Because we read an article yesterday with Daniel Schultz, and it said that we were actually utilizing bay savers in other parts of the city. And I was kind of curious on where those might be.
We are. Now, I cannot tell you exactly where they are. There's, I want to say there's in between 40 and 50 of them around the city. And typically, Ron, where you'll see them is closer to like waterways and bodies of water where that drainage inlet would go into an outfall, which is basically, when you say outfall, it's just a pipe that just kind of runs right into the bay. And you can see those along Beach Drive. You can see them along the Marina, kind of there like near Hotel Indigo and Destination Panama City right there where 4th Street turns into Government Street. There's a couple of outfalls. They just come right out the side of the Marina, and it's just rainwater basically going into the bay. And so the 40 or so that we have around the city right now are in those areas where the outfall, instead of going into a storm drain or into a retention pond or a detention pond and then percolating into the earth, it goes into the bay. And so we have those around areas where there's drainage inlets that collect that water and try to separate it. It basically, all the sediment, all the stuff that kind of washes all that, it catches all of that. Now, not all of it. I shouldn't say all of it.
Well, the problem with it is right now is that the narrative that's going against it is like, well, it's just a mesh net. It's not really going to catch anything. But we watched a video on it yesterday with Daniel.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it looks like it's pretty damn good. Like, it doesn't look like it's like, oh, we're just going to put a net there, or it's going to be like a little tin foil net that's going to catch stuff. It actually, there's
almost like a I don't know,
pool
like
pump.
Yeah, no, I don't know about that, but it is.
But yeah, I mean, that's what it looks
creates
like.
almost like a hydraulic separator. I mean, it's pretty amazing, and I'm familiar with the company Advanced Drainage System that manufactures them. They have an office on Back Beach Road in Panama City Beach. And I've met some of their staff in Florida at both the Public Works Association, seminars and also with the Florida League of Cities. And so I know that they make a really good product, and they have engineers that are out there selling it. I mean, these aren't guys like me that that don't really have an engineering or environmental background. I mean, they are bringing in like experts to sell these type of products. And so we're looking at putting 17 of them in along that to kind of to run all of that stormwater right now that's just washing right into the bay. And listen, at the end of the day, that's the only reason. This is another fact. And that's the only reason that we really even need an environmental resource permit from the Department of Environmental Protection. If we weren't upgrading to the bay savers and we were just putting in the sidewalk, we wouldn't need anything from DEP or from the Army Corps. We would just need, assuming the road doesn't transfer, we just would need the right-of-way permit from the DOT, and we could proceed. The DOT, if they were doing it themselves, they wouldn't need anything. It's their road. They just would go and just build it. And so, we kind of brought this into it because we wanted to add in, 120 plus new trees. We wanted to take this opportunity to upgrade all of those drainage inlets along Beach Drive to improve the health of our bay. We wanted to add in, over 2,000 native plants in the landscaping along Beach Drive, and so all of that was done. It's never really been, ever since I moved back just a few years ago and heard about it. It's always been so much more than just another sidewalk, and I think that maybe the city hasn't done the best job in communicating that, and so I hope people see the project for what it really is, and again, not taking private property rights, definitely making huge environmental improvements that the outside expert from Mobile weighed in with, trying to improve walkability and connectivity through a community. And I think that's important. That was something that I really enjoyed when I moved away from my home for a season to work, was being able to move around, not just always in a vehicle, but also on foot or on a bike.
Two more topics.
Yes, sir. By the way, this is water for your viewers. I'm not hitting a beer before 5 o'clock.
Well, nobody would have known what time it was until you said it.
Yeah.
Let's move north. Let's go to the CDD.
Okay.
This is a hot topic, man.
Yep.
Ed Young came on the other day, and man, dude, my brain hurt after I had him on. It was pretty rough. So, first question about the CDD. The ad valorem that is collected. So this is something that the mayor has said. This is something that a couple other candidates have said. It's like 45 or 46% of the ad valorem that is collected from the people living in SweetBay is going back to the developer. This is a very... First of all, I have my own opinion on it.
Okay.
Before I even entertain, and again, there's been a lot of convincing evidence that's kind of come on the show. And I mean, it's been like there's paperwork and there's numbers and there's data. As being the city manager, I'm sure you could probably shed some light on this. Explain, before even explaining the SweetBay deal.
Yeah.
What is a CDD?
Yeah. So, and I think one thing that's really important is the CDD existed, and CDDs exist all over the state of Florida, all over the nation.
I'm tracking.
And the CDD is a community development district. It existed even before the SweetBay interlocal. That's, I think, where most of some of the confusion and some of the debate is about, is specifically with the interlocal agreement, which is kind of like a tax increment financing district. That's what we call. And I
TIF,
try to,
yeah.
and I'll try, or a TIF.
Yeah.
And just to make it very simple, and we've done this with other type of developers, where you basically go into an area where, they kind of call it the but for, but for this particular incentive, this development may not happen. And that doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. I think that's what, there's no cash flow out from the taxpayers to the developer in any of these circumstances with a TIF. And I think that is the underscore thing I really want to make here. What it does is it goes in and like CRAs will encourage these in areas that really need to see development improved. And other areas where you want to see it, either accelerated, or you want to make sure it maintains its course. And I think that's kind of where we are with SweetBay. It was not necessarily nobody's trying to say that SweetBay is underdeveloped or blighted, but we definitely want to see that build out, and I think that will definitely increase the taxable revenue in the city. Okay, so but what a TIF will do, we'll go in there and kind of, okay, what are the property rates today? Okay, and then you say, okay, boom, and I'll just, the taxable rate on this is $100. We get $100 a year on this piece of property and property taxes, but man, it could be so much more. So you go in there, and if you get approved for the TIF, they kind of freeze it, and then they improve it, and now let's say maybe it's worth so much more that now the taxable value is, well, let's even say it doubled. It's now $200. However, what we will do is the incentive is to go and say, if you will come in here and you will take this piece of property and either continue to develop or redevelop it, there's a certain percentage of that difference from the 100 to the 200 that will rebate back to you. And there's all sorts of stipulations that have to happen. But again, the city is still collecting some of that extra $100, but if that development hadn't happened, there would be nothing there. So I had a boss one time tell me, one of the congressmen I worked for, and he would say, hey, listen, 1/8 of something is better than 7/8 of nothing. And so I think that's kind of when we talk about TIFs in general. Now, all a community development district is, which again is kind of a separate issue, is it's kind of an inward-facing community or development where where some of their taxes and some of their ad valorem taxes kind of stay there to particularly work in their area, and so you'll see that. I mean, a CRA is kind of like that, where the taxes kind of stay in the CRA, and then there's very specific things. All of this with SweetBay, it's really all about the infrastructure. And I want to say one key thing: the development agreement with the developer of SweetBay, the San Andrew Bay Land Company, they actually have to give the city through infrastructure improvements over $3 million. And we're in the process right now of working through that, and we're going to make some improvements probably along Frankfurt Avenue. We're looking over at the Robinson Bayou Bridge, because now SweetBay has come out onto the north side of Frankfurt Avenue, and coming down. So I think that's a key point in all of this is, okay, we're going to get over $3 million from them. So now if you look at the broader SweetBay, I mean, they're still looking to continue to develop. And the developer came and said, listen, economic changes, and we all know what happened over the last 4 or 5 years with inflation and interest rates. And so I think even to the casual observer, I mean, some things have slowed down. And so, what they wanted to suggest was entering into an interlocal agreement with this tax increment financing district so that, the difference from where they are, at the average sale to a higher priced home sale, we're going to kind of share some of that revenue. But again, that's revenue that might not be there if they don't continue to develop. Now, the question is, and it's a fair question, do we believe the developer's being honest? Well, I think after having multiple conversations, the commission, I believe, rightly, took them at their word and saw value in this. But and again, 50% of the money that we weren't going to potentially get is coming to the city, and then of that 50%, 35% goes to the general fund that we can do, that the commission can really have a lot of flexibility with, and then 15% of it goes into a special fund, not just for use in SweetBay, but for infrastructure in the Forest Park Mobility District.
I'm glad you brought that up. So that was kind of like the thing. So like the thing is like, oh, well, it's subsidized. They're subsidizing it, which, I mean, I get it. But the other part of that is the way that it was explained to me is that the money that is accumulated off of SweetBay also goes into other parts of that ward, not just for there.
That is correct.
So I said that, and I was laughed at, and it was like,
well, see, yeah. But Ron, those maps were put on the screen in the meeting. I mean, that's what. So
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't want to laugh at anybody, but I mean,
it's more of like these things get said, and I don't think. Here's the thing: I don't believe that anybody is intentionally putting out false information. I think it's just it really does have to do with the being informed.
Right.
But the thing about it is, if that money that is going to be, and again, I don't live in Panama City, so I don't have
we'll work on that. We'll find you a nice house in Panama City.
But my parents do. But the thing about it is like, if that money is going to be utilized on not just SweetBay, but also other parts of the ward, I'm not understanding what the problem is.
Right. So I think number one is that none of the money, even that 50%, that it's not going to the developer. It's going to the CDD.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah,
and then the 35% is coming to us, to the general fund of the city, and then 15% into this special fund for transportation projects in what we call the Forest Park Mobility District. And you are correct. It touches wards 2, 3, and 4. Really only Ward 1, which is the Cove, Millville, and downtown, and kind of the Garden Club, Lake Caroline area. That's Ward 1. That's the only one that doesn't touch the Forest Park Mobility District. So we can come into Forest Park. We can go over into, kind of west of Frankfurt Avenue. We can go into Venetian Villa. I mean, I'm not specifically giving you the boundaries, but yes, wards 2, 3, and 4 are all a portion of those wards. Not all of the wards, but a portion of those wards are inside of the Forest Park Mobility District. So we'll be able to use those transportation projects funds from that 15% in that larger area. And so we've kind of already started kind of sketching some of that out when some of that money starts coming in. And so, the goal is to see that, that they don't take their foot off the gas in development and build that out. And we'll see the ad valorem for the city, continue to grow where it might have likely slowed down. And then we'll see additional money can go back into the infrastructure because they build that infrastructure. The developer does. Like, I'm not building all that infrastructure for these new homes with general fund money. The developer is.
The argument on it, though, is whether or not the developer was being honest.
Yeah.
And again, like you said, multiple conversations that have gone on with the commission.
Yeah.
You guys are the ones that make that, and that's the reason why those people are elected. Is to make
Not you guys, not me.
Well, no, I know that. I know. But when you know what I mean, is like being the city of Panama City, the elected officials, you elect these guys to make those decisions. So if you don't trust those guys' judgment on it, that's on the taxpayers.
And I have long since said that some issues might have to be just addressed at the ballot box. And that's the beauty of our representative republic. But, as conservatives, we are supposed to thrive and drive on facts, reason, logic, the truth, and the facts. And so, I mean, it's spelled out clearly, and you see where, again, like to your point, that Forest Park Mobility District is way bigger than just SweetBay. It touches wards 2, 3, and 4. I
did forget to hit on something, and it just now hit me, so I'm going to run back to Beach Drive real quick.
Run back.
I'm sorry. Reallocation and repurposing of funds.
Okay, yeah. You know what?
Forgot about that one.
Forgot about that
one. It just hit me. So.
It's great questions, and I'm glad you remembered that. So I think we're calling it a grant, but it's really technically not a grant. It's being administered and executed like a grant, just from a financial transaction standpoint and just kind of that accountability standpoint with the required paperwork through FDOT. But it is a state appropriation through directly approved by the state legislature several years ago. And so it can't just be moved around like a normal grant. There are certain circumstances with a regular grant where you can, if you meet certain stipulations. Now, the city could decide that they just want to give this money back. And if they do, the legislature may consider reappropriating new money for something else. But it's not a matter of just getting this transferred. And we have a letter from the District 3 Secretary of the FDOT stating this. And then we also have an email from Senator Jay Trumbull stating this from the Senate Appropriations staff director or attorney. I can't remember which one, but
that email sent to the mayor on that did express the Florida state statute.
Yeah,
which says that it can't be done.
And again, it's because it's an appropriation. Yeah. And listen, if we do end up turning that money back, Miami, Orlando, Fort Lauderdale, they'll happily take it.
That's the argument. And again, like several people have said this, where it's like, well, if we don't need it, give the money back, and then somebody that needs it will utilize that money, or they'll realize that they don't need it, and then there's like this ethical switch that'll turn off in somebody's brain. But I really like what was said to me the other day. It was like, well, you're turning down money, that the government's offering you, and these people want to sit there. These people being the taxpayer wants to sit there and wants to say, hey, just turn down the money. But it's like, well, did you turn down the COVID checks that you were getting? Those are like the types of things that
I didn't take any COVID checks.
Well, I know, but I'm saying the government sends money out all the time, and either somebody else is going to utilize it, and you don't want, because what's going to happen is most of as much as a lot of people are going to like this, a lot of the Democratic, Democrats, liberal, whatever you want to call it, those cities, they're just going to take that money and they're going to do whatever they want with it. And they're going to build up their cities, and we have money there that we can utilize.
A lot of Republican cities would do it. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, money collected in Tallahassee and money collected in Washington, D.C. is still our money. Mm-hmm. And so I don't understand, I guess, philosophically, why you wouldn't want to try to go after these grants and try to go after these appropriations in order to help benefit our community, and like I said, I mean, if we don't go for them, and listen, both Tallahassee and DC, they really don't just hand them out. I mean, it's a pretty involved process to get a state or a federal grant or a state loan, like the state revolving fund. I mean, it's a pretty big process, but I think that I think the way our company is set up, I mean, obviously. States have certain rights, but there are different sized cities, from cities with, millions of people in them to cities with only 3,000 people in them. And, we don't necessarily want to have everybody like into one urban area. You know, some people may want that, and they can live that, and they can choose that. Some people want to live more rural, and so when certain disasters happen, I think it's important that local communities and states have a responsibility. But there are certain big disasters and big instances where that's why we are a connection of 50 states in order to come in and help at different times, depending on the situation. And so, yeah, I think that, I think going after federal and state grants is the right thing for any community leader to do. Now, if the DC or Tallahassee wants to reduce those, reduce our taxes and give out less grants and less public assistance, then so be it. Then we'll adapt and we'll move forward with that, and that'd be great. But until they do, I think that the leaders of the municipalities in Bay County and Bay County itself need to try to work with our representatives in Tallahassee and our representatives in DC to bring some of our tax dollars back home.
Oh. All right, last topic, and it kind of like intertwines. It seems like we're going to talk about the Marina.
It all intertwines.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the Marina seems like it's connected with the Marina Civic Center, boat slips, and Martin Theater.
Yeah.
So, geez, man.
And it's all FEMA through there, so. FEMA's threw up so much of it, and listen, it's easy to take shots at FEMA. They do some things well, and in fact, the role I had in the Trump administration, I was actually at Health and Human Services, running the Office of Refugee Resettlement, and then I went over to the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response. And we were embedded a lot with FEMA and Border Patrol and U.S. Customs and a lot of things that were going on at the border, and then also with COVID. And so, I kind of seen how FEMA works. They, look, no system is perfect. And I think, before I, kind of get into those different projects around the downtown Marina and all that, it was good, just popped into my head here. I always grimace when I hear people say that government is evil, and I think that's or corporations are evil, or that's just such a red herring kind of a argument. No, like corporations. Some corporations make bad decisions. Some government officials make bad decisions. Some husbands and wives make bad decisions, not because those institutions are bad. It's because you have imperfect, sinful men and women that are involved in that, and mistakes are made and everything. But I think that, for me, faith is huge. I know it is with you as well. Government is a good and necessary thing, whether it's the civil government or church government or inside the sphere of the family and with mom and dad. But mistakes are going to get made, but that doesn't mean the institution itself is evil. And so, so I want to be very careful, even when I express frustration about FEMA or maybe about, DOT or anything like that. I mean, there are men and women that intentionally choose to maybe to not make as much money because they feel called to public service. And I'm glad for that, because I want to see people that love to serve their communities, their counties, their states, their nations. So, again, we all have frustrations.
Well, that's why it's really, really hard for me. And here, I'll put it out there and for the viewers more than anything, because I think, Kendall, how many hours do you think we've put into candidates that are running for office now?
Oh, jeez.
I stay up. I was up till... probably 1 o'clock last night. The night before, I was up till about 2 in the morning. The night before that, 12 hours each episode. Yours isn't going to be as much because you're not planning on spending 4 or 5 hours with me. But what really, really sucks, and it just, I, coming from a military background, leaving home, and then to kind of have like this coarse heart. I was just talking to Daniel Raffield on the phone about this the other day, because him and I really.
Oh, that's right. You guys were opponents in a race.
Man, I really treated him pretty bad, and it was because of the way that I was looking at things, and I was in a different mindset at the time. But I was talking to him the other day, and he's learning something that I already know about, which was public service and selfless service.
Yeah.
Now, I know a lot about that game, and he didn't know anything about it, and he's learning about that now. And one of the things that I'm learning now is what he talked about all the time. And I hate to say this, but it's like loving people. Like that's what
Loving
he used to say
people,
all
yeah.
the time, and I used to laugh at it. But having people on, like I have, in a way, in a heterosexual way, I've fallen in love with everybody who's come on my show so far. Everybody who's running for office, and it's hard to sit there and watch people at each other's throats and cut people personally, just to try to make a point. And so, and I know you don't want much in on this fight, but it's like it has been very, very frustrating through this election. Just sit up there and watch the city of Panama City, and even where I'm from, over in Lynn Haven, to see the powers that be cut people deep to almost where there's like no evidence to back anything up. There's no, and it's all for some sort of agenda. But even the people that are doing that, they're not that type of person. Once they're not up there on the dais, some may be, some might be. But when you're talking about this, the people that sit there, and I know because I've sat on people's doorsteps, both for one of my best friends who ran for office, and then of course myself. And you stand on people's doorstep, and people trust you, and people look at that, and they trust you to make the right decisions. And then it's like as soon as you don't do something that somebody doesn't like, everybody runs with it, and then now they're an evil person, like kind of like what you were saying. It's like I don't believe that anybody that is this is just my own personal opinion. I don't believe that anybody up there is an evil person. I think that everybody wants to see something go a specific way, but when you start making personal attacks, my heart breaks because it's like. It's hard.
We've gotten to a point as a nation, I think, where it's and I feel like it's been this way for many, many years, where it's kind of in vogue to just attack the government. And I think, and elected and appointed officials and I probably back in my early days before I really got into this business, probably didn't have the best view of government, and like I said, I want it to be small and efficient, but here at the local level, we've talked about, I was chief of staff to two of the most conservative members of Congress. I was a Trump appointee, but I'm telling you, man, this local stuff is where the rubber meets the road. And so, we have to really be efficient. We present a balanced budget every year. We have to make our pennies and our nickels and our dimes and dollars go really, really far and do as much as we possibly can. But, I think too, I think it has a lot to do with kind of how you were raised and some of the expectations placed on you. I was at a National League of Cities conference recently, and the vice president spoke. And there was a small number of people. It's always, that's where people like to vote. There was a small number of people that booed and screamed and stormed out. And I just was sitting here thinking, and, I made the comment to someone. I said, I don't care who the elected official is. If they're the same party, if I completely disagree with them or mostly disagree with them, I just know that, not only my parents, but both sets of my grandparents would be very disappointed in me if I was treating someone in authority like that. And so, you can do the right thing the wrong way. And I think that's what's really lost in today's world. The ends does not justify the means. And I understand that a lot of these races, whether it be for a local election or a state election or even a federal election, it stirs a lot of emotions. But it's just, I don't know. My dad always said, be humble in victory and gracious in defeat. And I think that's kind of an important thing to kind of take to it. So there's been some things said about me. There were things said about me, going back 15 plus 20 years when I got involved in all of this. But, I know where my heart is. I know what my intentions are. And the people that really know me know the truth as well. And so that's really what drives me. But, the other thing, Ron, is, human nature, we so often judge ourselves by our best intentions, but we judge others by their worst example. And it really should be the opposite. Like, we don't always set the right example, but we really, I intended this or I intended that. So, listen, we're at a real turning point, I think, for our city. I think, after a major hurricane like we had, and, we weren't down here for the hurricane because we were living in Virginia at the time, but I was down here with my brother within a few days to check on mom and dad and our sister and her husband and the house that my wife and I own still. And just the devastation. And so, communities, recovering from this, it's a hard thing to do. And we probably still have I'd say we probably still have another 7 to 10 years left to really recover from that hurricane. So I was living 1,000 miles away in the DC suburbs, and we had tropical storm force winds from Hurricane Michael that far up. So I just, what this community went through, it was pretty devastating. So I think you see some of where we are as we kind of come out of that recovery, and I think decisions could have been made differently. We could have made better decisions, but that's easy to say today. It's easy for me to say that had I been city manager 20 years ago or 10 years ago, I would have done things differently. I have that luxury, and so I always want to really be gracious with people and give people the benefit of the doubt until they specifically give me a reason not to. So I don't know how we got off on that tangent, but that was like a sermon. I apologize.
No, hey, it's going to make some good reels.
Yeah.
Anyway,
but there was the FEMA and the Marina and all
that.
Well,
I really wasn't going to get too much into FEMA.
But it's all connected.
I don't think you can talk about it without talking about it.
I think I can really kind of, bring it all together. Yeah. So, FEMA is great when it is, but it's not when it's not, Right. And so every time you use money from the federal government, and to some degree the state government, really the federal government especially, whether it be through HUD, through a CDBG grant, which is Community Development Block Grant, or through FEMA with HMGP, which is Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, or PA Public Assistance, you have to do some type of environmental review where they come in and and that can take 12, 18, 24 plus months. And so I think the city commission, rather than, they kind of moved us in a decision, in my mind, in a very wise way, moved us from this whack-a-mole where we have like 20, 25 projects out there and just said, you know what, let's consolidate those funds into a couple of really big projects that we know we can get done, where the environmental, survey, whether it's environmental historical preservation or the environmental review, all that's been done. And we can move forward. So that's what they did. And they focused on the MLK Rec Center over in East Panama City at the southeast corner of 15th and MLK. And that's not even going to be the MLK Rec Center anymore. It's going to become the MLK Rec Complex now. We're closing a road. We're expanding the area for the community to come and play. That was almost a $20 million project. A lot of folks have talked about the Martin Theater. And I think that's important to know that of that $32 million project, only 2 of it is coming from the city. 30 of it is FEMA. $30 million that is FEMA. So
say that again.
Of the
$30 million
is from FEMA. Oh. And it's not just the Martin Theater. It's not just a little 500-seat theater. Mm-hmm. It's really the Martin Theater complex. If you look at the old DIB building to the north, which is going to be made the Ritz, and then if you look to the south, they've already torn down the old green room. They're going to put back the Tennessee House. And, I walked around downtown St. Andrews a few weeks ago with one of my daughters and my brother-in-law, and we popped upstairs to Hunt's because my brother-in-law saw some of his friends up there and some coworkers. And so we went up there for a few minutes, and, Hunt's Oyster Bar built this huge upstairs.
Yeah, it's great.
And it made me realize, wow, just kind of right overlooking Beck Avenue, what a great view for an event, for a parade. And so you're going to kind of see some of that come alive in downtown Panama City as well, with the Ritz and with the Tennessee House, kind of with like a wraparound balcony there at 4th Street and Harrison Avenue. And so I'm just like, man, that is really going to be an awesome place for events, for parades, for festivals, you name it. And if you go down there even right now tonight, Thursday night, I guarantee you St. Andrews and downtown Panama City are both going to be hopping. Yeah. And so I think that's a good investment. But FEMA would have paid a percentage of putting the downtown marina back with some of the docks the way they were. But there was a decision that maybe that was underutilized to some place. I mean, I know that, and again, I didn't have a lot of knowledge of the marinas in the past. I'm not really a boat owner, but I do know that the city was subsidizing a lot of those boat slips. I mean, they were like, some of them I heard like just $100 a month for some of these, and so. And it didn't go through any of that environmental historical preservation. So again, I think the commission wisely got to a point where, look, we can't have all these trying to twirl 20 plates or whatever with all these FEMA projects. Mm-hmm. Let's consolidate into a few really big projects, where we know we already have the historical and environmental clearance. So you saw the Martin Theater come out, you saw the MLK Rec Center, and then some other big projects around town that we did in regards to some of the infrastructure. And I think one thing too, and whether it's that FEMA money or whether it's the beach drive appropriation from the state, I think a lot of people, this is where I want to inform, and kind of educate. I think a lot of people look at the government, they look at like our $157 million budget at the city, and they're like, it's not just one big checkbook, For example, I give this example. So let's say Tyndall Air Force Base in the middle of this rebuild out there says, you know what, we really want to come in and we just want to put in there's Highway 98 out there. We want to put in a new lane out there, or there's some damage to this lane in the middle of the base. Well, I mean, they need to talk to the US DOT then, because that's a highway that would be their level of responsibility. You can't just take DOD money and go and spend it on the DOT. You can't take DOT money and spend it with HUD. Just like with the state and local government, you have some of those similar restrictions. Like I can't take infrastructure money and go and use it to build the Martin Theater.
I know, it's so much all the time. People are always like, they spent this kind of money. They should have utilized that money over here. And it's like, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. And it's because there's certain, it's a level of accountability, and it's a way for the government to, to kind of manage those resources and make sure that it is maintained, whether it be, there's taxes that are collected and they're used for the highways, they're used for the state parks, they're used for the forest, they're used for Department of Agriculture.
I think this would be a good time to say the reason why. So, the old saying, which I used to say this all the time, it's like, well, the more complex something is, it's meant to be complex because complexity equals fraud. But the more that I've looked into how government works, things like this are complex to actually stay away from fraud. You have to have these types of regulations, because if you didn't, money would go missing all the time.
I think that's a fair assessment, and I think too that there's all sorts of accountability and restrictions on where money can be spent. Some of our funds at the city are what we call enterprise funds, and those money come in for like utilities and solid waste, and that money can only be spent back for utilities. So I can't take money I collect for water, sewer, and garbage bills and go and just start repairing sidewalks. Yep. That's kind of the ad valorem angle of it. So, yeah.
Pretty much answered every question that I had.
I appreciate it.
I do want to ask one more. This will be my last one.
All right.
What are 5 things that you think that the city can do better with?
Oh, wow.
And actually, I say that. Sorry. I wanted to talk about that.
Can we hit pause and let me use the restroom real quick?
Yeah, man. I'm sorry. The bidding process. Mm-hmm. Talked about it a little bit before with a couple other people. There's even been, I think it was Brian Granger that talked about how there had to be a specific app that is used to be able to bid. You have to pay for the app. That's how it was explained.
Yeah. So
do you handle anything with the bidding process at all, being the manager? Or?
No. And I tell people. I mean, I did at one point when I first came to the city back in the summer of 21. I was the logistics director, mm-hmm. and the purchasing division is under that. But
let's cut that out.
Yeah.
So okay, cool. So
but I can speak to the bidding stuff if you want to do that, because it's incorrect. It's incorrect though. I know how it works, but I'm not. I mean, I'm over it all, but I don't handle. So let me say, so the bidding process, it doesn't cost any money to turn in a bid. Now, obviously, you're going to have to use resources as a contractor or a professional providing a proposal to craft that. but we use a system called Bonfire
Yeah.
where we digitally accept them. But if you'd rather not do that, even though it doesn't cost you a dime, if you want to print out the bid and put it in a sealed envelope and deliver it on time when the bid closes, that's fine too. But I want to point out that even if you print out a bid and seal it in an envelope and give it to us, we're not going to open it up until when the bid closes. The employees don't even look at that bid until the bid closes. So whether you submit it online through Bonfire digitally, or whether you print it out and put it in an envelope and hand it to us maybe 15 or 30 minutes before the bid closes and we open it up, if there's any error at that time, then it doesn't, you see how it doesn't matter if it was digitally submitted or if it was hand delivered. The bid's closed. What you've submitted either electronically or in person is what the bid is. Now, there are a few small things where, let's say you forgot to put the Trench Safety Act, that when your guys are working down in a trench on a utility program or utility project, you'll follow the appropriate trench safety, whatever. Well, we can tell you, Mr. Kill, your firm failed to include the Trench Safety Act form. It's 2:00 on Thursday. You have until 5 p.m. tomorrow to bring us this form, or your bid will be deemed non-responsive. Smaller things like that, like a form or something like that, we will give to often till the end of the business the following day. Now, there are some things where, like, if all your math is wrong and your bid doesn't add up, that might, you might be deemed unresponsive at that time.
Yeah, I know there's a point system and all of that.
Nope, we don't really rank. No, there's no point system. So
I guess that's only with the county.
I can't really speak to how the county does it, but yeah, no, we don't really rank it. I mean, it's the lowest, most responsive, or it's the lowest responsive bidder. So if you are deemed responsive by the purchasing division and the city attorney, then whoever is the lowest bidder wins. Because when you're dealing with state funds and federal funds, you have to go with the lowest responsive bidder.
Okay.
But responsive is key because it has to be done correctly. So,
Absolutely.
Yep.
So on to that last question. So the question is what do you, as the city manager, what are 5 things that you believe that the city could do better?
Oh, wow. So I think, communication is one that I think that, that we could definitely do better with. And I think we're trying. I mean, that was one of my things I heard the most about during the interview process to become the city manager, both one-on-one with the elected officials, but also kind of publicly and at the interview process itself. And I hear it in the community. Again, in a town where my family's been for almost 100 years, and having the job of, I used to work behind the Delta ticket counter. I worked for Channel 13 as a sales account executive. I worked for former Congressman Sutherland, and now I work for the city. I see people all the time, and some people are like, "Oh yeah, I saw that. That was really great," and the others are like, "Oh, man, y'all got to tell your story better. You got to do that." So I hear that a lot. So I think communicate better, and so we've done a few things recently that the team has done at my direction, and that is we're trying to do more alerts, more operational type alerts through text messaging, and not just rely on social media for everything, because with some of the algorithms you may not see a Facebook post or a tweet or something for hours or even days after it happens. So we really want to get into that. Where we can kind of geo-target folks to let them know that there's a road closed or a boil water notice, and we group it by I think 11 or 12 different areas in Panama City. So if we have a road closed in say St. Andrews, I don't need to tell Glenwood that there's a road closed in St. Andrews, or that there's a water boil notice in Millville. I don't need to go and tell SweetBay that. And so we're really trying to target that. And then also, and we've done this recently, but really start doing some videos to talk directly to the people and tell them why things are happening a certain way, or why they're not happening, or what we're doing. We're also trying to I think, on some of these big public projects in neighborhoods where we're literally going into a living, active neighborhood and tearing it up to rebuild everything. getting ahead of that as much as possible and let those folks know what really is coming. Another thing I think we can do better is and we're working towards this, I think, really hard, but really try to function more with a customer service mindset, that we are, there to serve. And that's some of the feedback that we've gotten. I think, that's definitely something that I want us to kind of do better at. And it can be tough because, a lot of people, when you're coming in to deal with getting a permit or pay a utility bill, that's not necessarily a fun thing to always have to do, but some level of accountability, I think even at the local level, is important when it comes to to building code and or whether, hey, getting a driver's license. I think it's okay to demonstrate that you've done certain things a certain way, that you're capable to drive safely, so that you don't put other people at risk. But I understand that there's a lot of frustration around that, and we're transitioning right now to bring some of those building services back in house, so that myself as the city manager and whoever the future city manager might be one day, and the development services director, we have a little bit more control over that process, because he and I both agree that there is some gray areas maybe, and some flexibility on certain things, and and what I want to do is create the atmosphere and the culture where if there is a little bit of gray area, if there is flexibility, we're going to err on the side of the resident or the business owner for their advantage, and not necessarily for the city's advantage. So that's the culture that I want to see us promote. I think we can do a better job of kind of getting ahead of some of our infrastructure challenges. The utility budget is around $33.5 million. That our city utilities engineer and the public works director manage, and about 16.5 of that is for maintenance and projects. I think that's over and above any of these state funded projects or state loans or federal projects or loans, and so we're trying to prioritize those. But we have, like, of our 130 lift stations around the city, over half of them are undergoing serious work in the next 2 to 3 years. Permanent bypass pumps, repair of the underground infrastructure around them. If they're of the 20 or 25 of them that have buildings, cleaning up those buildings to make them look nicer, versus the old, like Commissioner Hallegs likes to say, the old Laverne and Shirley, that tan and brown from the 70s look that they have. And so, I want to make sure that where we have some control, where we have some ability to affect that particular money on these, we are. And like I said, I talked about our streets division, but man, our utilities guys, they do work 7 days a week. I mean, with sewer leaks that happen, water leaks that are happening, cave-ins that are forming, those guys are on call, and they literally are almost working. They probably do work 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the underground utility team is like 40 people. I just want to put that in perspective. I mean, it's not a huge team. And so the work they do is phenomenal. And so I think that kind of ties back that I think we can maybe, and we've gotten some new employees in the last year that I think are helping us in this way, kind of trying to work more strategically. But see, we're undergoing a transition right now where, and I say, and again, I wasn't here for the storm when it hit.
Me neither. Yep.
But Ron, I mean, these guys and gals have literally been in triage mode since 5 o'clock on the evening of October 10th, 2018. And we are finally, I feel, starting to turn a corner where, okay, we can kind of breathe a little bit and kind of start looking at some of the repairs and some of the maintenance that we have to do, in a more strategic and more structured way. And so we're kind of working in zones, rather than kind of running around like I said, kind of that whack-a-mole, that game at the old Showbiz Pizza. While I'm dating myself here now with Showbiz Pizza, and so I want to really see us kind of attack, things more strategically, and we're doing that. And a lot of that is because of the help and support of the federal government, the state government, but it's also because of the tenacity and the dedication of these public servants that are working, and because of the resources that we have, because of the men and women that live, work, and play and shop in Panama City. So I want to make sure that, because I do feel we are really good stewards with the money, and so I want to be able to tell that story more. So that I think that's something else that we can demonstrate more in working more strategically, show that we're being better stewards of that money and making those investments go a little bit further. So you asked for 5. That's a lot. Usually people ask for 3, but 3. Yeah. So, we. I think that we want to look at some of our parks, and this, we've talked about this some, and so. I think that obviously quality of life is something that every city employee is a part of, that helps contribute to. But, during the interview process, I talked about kind of getting back to the basics, and that's for local government, that's roads, commodes, security, and safety. The number one job of federal government is to protect its citizens. And so I think that's so important with our police and fire here. But it's also important from a public works standpoint, making sure people have good roads to drive on, dependable potable water, and then just a great wastewater treatment plant system where all the wastewater goes. And I think those are the key fundamentals of local government. But I think also creating a quality of life is important as well, and it's one of our pillars that we have. But Ron, we have over 60 parks in Panama City.
Really?
And we're a population of about 40,000 people.
Yeah.
A lot of us in the city, over 60 parks. And a lot of us in the city have connections with Greenville, South Carolina.
This has been coming up like crazy.
Yeah. Well, it's because they were kind of a similar sized city, and they kind of where we were today, where they are today is kind of where they were 20 years ago is where we are today. That's what I meant. Spit it out, Jonathan. Where they were 20, 25 years ago is where we are today. And so, very similar in a lot of different ways. And Commissioner Halligan's dad actually served on the commission many years ago. But you look at kind of some of the things they've done from a police, fire, public works, parks and rec, economic development, some of the things they've done. And so, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. And so we can learn from some of their mistakes and some of their growing pains. But my point is that's a population, the city is about 70,000. You know how many parks they have? Just under 30. So, and this is a kind of a committee that a citizens committee that our commission has voted to at least to bring back the framework for. And so at the next meeting, this coming Tuesday, there'll be a discussion about creating a Parks and Rec Citizens Advisory Committee to look at kind of park realignment and closure, and to kind of have the citizens drive working with senior city staff on analyzing all 60 of our city parks. And, again, it gets back to my earlier statement at the beginning of the podcast. We really, in my opinion, and I think really with probably all of the elected officials would acknowledge too, that we really own way too much land through both our parks and through just miscellaneous lots throughout the city. So I think reducing the amount of land that we own and putting that money back into the private sector to have it benefit a family or a company, and then that in turn generates revenue for the city for us to then turn around and make the city even better. So I think kind of looking at a lot of our, like maybe collapsing some of our resources in regards to land and lots that we own is important. I'll give you a very specific example that myself and the assistant city manager and our fire chief were talking about. So that Fire Station 1, the Igloo. That thing has had water intrusion problems since it was built in the late 80s. My dad told me that. It's like, man, that thing leaked when they built it. But Hurricane Michael really amplified the problem. And so we desperately need to make some repairs to that to prevent the water intrusion. And so we're looking at ways to, the chief had saved up some capital money in order to repair that building. But the bids, because of inflation and just the time it's taken to really get it came in a little bit higher. So, we had to use a little bit of the insurance proceeds to fix that. But it's our desire to find a way in the next 6 months to pay that back. And so, this is, again, thinking strategically. We kind of looked at the footprint of Fire Station 1, and there really are on the south side of it 2 1/3 acre lots that we could potentially change the parcel on and potentially sell those, and those could become residential lots, and then someone could build a home there. And so, that's just one now there's a lot of things that has to still, we want to look at the feasibility. We want to make sure that the fire station has enough room for operation. But even some of our existing facilities, looking at that land footprint, do we own more land than we really need? And I think, I'm open to asking that question. And I think in some examples, it's like, yes, we need that land for this reason. And I think in other examples, you might be like, yeah, we could probably get rid of half this lot, or we could get rid of this whole lot and let somebody else have it, and have it not be an expense to the city, instead be a revenue to the city and a benefit to some family or to some business.
Yeah.
So that's 4. I think I can come up with one more. I think that I want to improve people feeling like they have access to City Hall and to the employees as well. And it's a little bit different, I think, than than people communicating and people feeling like they really know what we're doing and why we're doing it. But I think I think that virtual stuff is important, and everybody loves to do everything digitally and online and all that. But I think that human component is important still, and so we still got people that love to come into City Hall and write a check for their water bill, And so, I want to make sure that we kind of preserve that people still have a way to have that human connection and that connectivity with their local government. And
you're not lying, because one of the last things that people do, you can even ask Kendall, I hate it when I get an automated system and I don't get to talk to somebody.
I want to talk to someone. Yeah. So,
I hate like that. Like I think you're right on that. You're definitely onto something with that one.
Years and we've had some challenges with our phone system at City Hall, and we've made some changes recently. And I want to, getting people. I want to make it easier for people to get to the right person. And so, one little thing we did is, and this came out of the budget workshop with the commission last year, and that was a kind of a City Hall ambassador, and we have someone there, and and she's there 8 to 5 Monday through Friday, right in the main level in the lobby, and you can walk in and say, "Hi, I want to do X," and she can get you to the right person. And so I think that's important. And then I think a very specific thing about that accessibility is I really want us to get our building services division like really up to speed as quick as possible. We can do a better job with that. But we're transitioning from a private provider to bringing it in-house. And so, with that type of transition, there's going to be some growing and transition pains. But we've got a great group of men and women in there. And, so we're trying to staff that up so that people can get the necessary permits and the development order and all that kind of stuff through quickly. So I think that is, I think broader, the accessibility at City Hall, but really that is one department because we are looking to get more control, kind of bringing it back in-house and have control of our own destiny. That's an area where we really need to focus hard on in the next 4 to 6 months, and we're doing that.
Well, man, I'm very happy that you came on to kind of talk about everything that's out there right now.
Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, the information was definitely where it needed to be. You were able to explain a lot. So, and you're always welcome on.
Well, you let me know when you want me to come back, and we'll talk about things.
Ron, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, Ron.
Thank you.
Give my best to your mom.
Yeah.